wind with the trees, that's always an earth show.
Yeah.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, Ed.
Kevin?
Okay, everybody, thank you. I did start the live stream just so you folks know. And we do have quite a number of folks who are attendees on this, and they actually can hear you. We will record and start in another couple of minutes, according to my clock. I've got 6:57, 6:58, so we're gonna wait and make sure. I think we got everybody here, though.
Well,
So, Mayor, you, JCP, I know think it's going to be pretty bad.
They send out updates just reminding people to call their 800 number in case they lose power, so they can track and monitor, all the outages that are occurring, live as they happen. And then they have crews standing by. It just the wind is, I think, their biggest concern this evening.
Yeah, the ground is still wet, so whatever trees and the roots, and then you get a gust of 50-mile wind or something like that, that could be an issue. So.
Yep.
yeah, it's not so bad when when the trees aren't leaved. It's worse when the leaves are on.
You got it.
So there he is. Chris is joining.
Yeah.
And now we have a full contingent.
Oops, I made a mistake here. I think we got someone that shouldn't be.
Yeah, Christian DeMar.
Yeah.
Hello, this is Chris Damari. I'm a Holmdel resident. Is this not the public forum part?
This is, but I by accident promoted you to the panel.
Uh-oh.
We're gonna remove
I don't want to do
you
that.
can be on. You can certainly watch, but you wouldn't be on the panel. So I apologize for that. So we're gonna have to.
Can he log out and then come back on?
Yeah. Listen, Christian, I apologize.
All good, all good. I'm going to log out and come back in.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Chris, can you hear us?
He's on mute, Chris. If you.
I know.
And,
Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
and I don't know if your camera is turned on or not, but we can't see you right now.
Yes, 7. Getting started.
Chris, sometimes depending on what webcam camera you have, if there's a shuttle or something like that, that may block it, or you may have to turn on the video to start it.
Yeah, I'm working on the video. Like your township attorney, you can never log on and
I think we can hear you say something, but it's not coming too clear, Chris.
so can you hear me all right, kid?
I can hear you say, can you hear us? But it's not coming through that loud.
Yeah, make sure you're facing the microphone.
So I apologize to all those who are now in attendance watching this. We are live. It is being live streamed. We got one panel member that we got some technical glitches. So we're just gonna hopefully get that clear up and we'll get started. Chris, I know we got you scheduled not as the first speaker, so maybe, I don't know, it's worth trying to log off and log back on again, or you want to try to see if you could fix that now?
Well, he can listen while we're you
Yeah.
do your
Yeah.
introduction.
Okay. Why don't we do that then? Let me call this meeting to order. Counselor, if you could read the Open Public Meetings Act notice, please.
Yes, certainly. I hereby announce that pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in the notice which was sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, and posted on the bulletin board in Township Hall and filed in the Township Clerk's office.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Burke,
Here,
Commissioner Buffalino,
Here.
Commissioner Gilstein,
Here.
Vice Chair Castning.
Here.
And Chair Kinji.
Here.
You have a full
Okay,
lineup.
we have a quorum. So this meeting is in effect. Before we begin the formal agenda, I just want to make two quick announcements. You know, one of the things that we get pleasantly surprised from time to time is that this week, each of the 5 commissioners actually receive a nice letter from Monmouth County Sheriff Sean Golden, congratulating on our election to the Charter Study Commission. And I'm just going to read a quick sentence or two from there. And in his letter, in the first paragraph, he says, "What a tremendous honor to be elected to serve the residents of your community. The responsibility is great, but as a leader, you will have an opportunity to address challenges you may see locally and the many issues we are facing across the nation and globally." So I just want to acknowledge, you know, the letter from it is a really nice gesture. I think some of you may know that Sheriff Sean Golden is also the chairman of the Monmouth County Republican Party. For him to take time out to do this, we really appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for his support for all of us here. The second quick thing is that this is now our 7th meeting. And I think we explained to those of you who have attended our meetings in the past that, you know, our work is broadly kind of defined into 3 phases. Phase 1 is a review and study of our current local form of government, which is the Township Committee. And then the second phase 2 is to kind of look at alternatives and explore them, what areas have we heard that maybe it could be more appropriate and so on. And then obviously the last phase, deliberation and recommendation. So what I want to mention is that this is our 7th meeting now. We've got a number of elected officials and past and present, as well as the township administrator and so on that we have interviewed. And tonight we're really honored to have the current mayor of Holmdel Temple, as well as a mayor from Ocean Township and another special guest from the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs and so on. So we're going to be entering in this transition of kind of phase 1 to phase 2. So phase 1 is not concluded. We still got Mayor Bontempo. There may be 1 or 2 other elected officials from the Township Committee form of government that we're going to talk to and listen to. But at the same time, we do have some experts and people who are currently operating under different forms of government that would be useful and give us input. So we're going to be in this phase that will be kind of transitioning. It's not a black and white ending of phase 1 to phase 2, but we are toward the end of phase 1 and start to transition into that. So with that, let me welcome our first guest, Mayor Bontempo, and I will turn this over to Jerry, Commissioner Buffalino. Oh, I'm sorry.
We have to do the pledge and the moment of
I
silence.
apologize. So what we're going to do is if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then please remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment's silence to honor troops here and abroad that work tirelessly every day to protect us. Thank you. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Also, if I could, before we actually turn it over to our speakers, is Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for the January 6th meeting, please?
I'll move.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. The minutes are approved. So now I turn to Commissioner Buffalino to please introduce Mayor Greg Bontempo and then to lead the question and answer session.
Greg Bontempo is the current mayor of Holmdel. He has served as a member of the Township Committee since 2012 and has been selected by the Township Committee to serve as mayor in 2017, 2020, 2021, and this year, 2022. Prior to serving on the Township Committee, Greg was a member of the Township Planning Board and actually served as its vice chair. He has been an active volunteer in town for many years, including serving as a coach on the HYAA. Pleased to welcome Greg for our meeting this evening. Thank you for coming, Greg.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you for the intro. If it's okay, I'd just like to read a brief statement before we begin with any questions that the commission has.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Greg.
So I'd like to say good evening and thank you for inviting me to the Charter Study Commission. I'm pleased to be with you here tonight. As you know, last year the Township Committee approved an ordinance to establish this Charter Study Commission. It was then approved by the voters in last year's general November election. Being a longtime Township Committee member, I supported the Charter Study because I thought, and I believe there are many flaws in our current Township Committee form of government. And I believe that we can do better here in Holmdel. I want to share a few thoughts, and then I'm happy to answer any of your questions here this evening. So in 2022, I don't think that it makes sense for that the people of Holmdel cannot directly elect a mayor. Our current system of government, of people that have paid attention for the last few years, has led to chaos and confusion here in Holmdel, especially sometimes when an individual gets reelected, the Township Committee, and is not reelected as mayor. That controversy happened when I was first elected for mayor in 2017. The Township Committee, also system form of government, also means that the mayor is picked in a closed process. When a Township Committee is all the same party, the mayor is often picked in a political caucus where the political party makes a decision. And the people really don't see what happens, how it occurs, and the people have no input into who is running their town. Under the Township Committee system, there's a primary and a general election every single year. I feel like there's always campaign going on, as many people in Holmdel have emailed me numerous times about the town being littered with lawn signs. Sometimes people feel that there's too many signs, there's no control, and it's very difficult to control it with the, obviously freedom of speech. So it just creates, in some people's view, litter scattered all over town. I've also seen a delay in the Township Committee taking actions right before the next election cycle comes up, which means you only get things done in the periods where you're actually not running because you're avoiding some issues that may be controversial but may not be the right thing for the township. I also think that less frequent elections would give elected officials a better chance of getting things done for the people which they serve, rather than having to deal with constant political campaigning that's going on in our town. Under Township Committee form of government, no individual TC member has any power. The administrator is supposed to take direction from the majority, which makes it difficult for the business to be conducted outside of a Township Committee meeting. I think it's important to have a strong administrator that can take care of the day-to-day business of the township. Without having that, it makes the administrator, whoever that person is, try to figure out what the consensus is, what the majority is, so they can make decisions. It often delays things and prevents timely, decisive actions being taken place to get work done for the community which directly affect our residents. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Greg. The first question that we have for you is basically to describe your current role and other experiences that you've had in local government. Do you want to comment a little further on what you just told us?
Sure. So, been on the Township Committee for over a decade, served years as mayor, as well as deputy mayor. I've been involved in the community on the planning board for years before I was on the Township Committee, as well as the years I've been on the Township Committee. And additionally, I've been involved with, as a member of the board of Bayshore Community Hospital, which is part of Meridian. I felt that that was important because the Holmdel is very unique. We have assets that many towns wish they had, between the hospital being here and the hospital, Hackensack Meridian, making significant investments in this hospital, which is improving healthcare services for the entire community. Having the Art Center here, which many of you know was a hub during the initial COVID pandemic for testing for a FEMA site, and then having the asset of Bell Works, which is one of the was been a hub for industry commerce for years, and now really revitalizing that building keeps our community thriving. So based on that, I thought it was important to get involved in the hospital to see if I could volunteer and help in any way possible. And that's been going on even before, again, I was involved in local politics. Also, for the last, I guess it's about 5 or 6 years, I served on the Monmouth County Improvement Authority. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, that's the finance board of the county, AAA rated, that does all the bonding for the county, plus all the municipalities, school boards, fire districts that elect to use the county's AAA bond rating to get the best rates possible. In Holmdel, we have a AAA rating, so we get the same rates that the county would get, so we can do things on our own. But there are many towns in Monmouth County do not have the financial strength that Holmdel has, and hence they go to the MCIA for their bonding, as well as towns and schools and some specific fire districts.
Thank you, Greg. I think you've covered some of this already, but I'm going to ask anyway, and I'm going to combine the questions 2 and 3 into one question for you. Knowing that Holmdel has been operating under a township form of government for many, many years, since the 1800s, I believe, what do you think works best? And then what do you think doesn't work? I think you've addressed some of these, but if you want to elaborate a little further.
I believe that the residents of this town have really impressed me. They are very astute, very involved, and want to know what's going on in their government. And that became clear during the pandemic when we were sending out communications, and we started, I guess it was around sending out messages through our system. That was maybe around 12,000 people were on the system, or 12,000 numbers, communication, or let's call it endpoints. And by the end of it, we had almost doubled that to over 23,000 were coming on. So people were more engaged with local government than I've ever seen. We didn't have to ask people to sign up to be informed. They were doing it on their own proactively. The community at large we have, I believe, is intelligent, and they should be involved in the decision-making process to who is running their town. Going forward, I think our form of government, as I mentioned, is a challenge to operate under, especially for an administrator that's trying to do his or her job, but can't make a decision because she doesn't know if she has majority of people supporting what she wants to do or he wants to do, let alone resolve things, quickly and efficiently. So, in a true democracy, an open environment, I think that it makes most sense. And that's why I was a big proponent in getting not only this, but, we got 3 referendums approved by the public last year. This was one of the 3. And that was big because I don't remember in 2 decades, maybe longer, anybody ever putting that many referendums on the ballot and allowing the voters to decide what's best for the community. So the turnout we had certainly indicated to me that people are engaged and they want to be involved in what's happening in their town.
Great. I think you've answered question number 4 regarding directly electing the mayor, so I'm going to skip that one. And to question number 5, you know that our township committee consists of 5 members that are elected at large by the township every 3 years on a staggered basis. Effectively, this means that a local election occurs every year. Other forms of local government have 1 to 3 years between elections. Do you have any thoughts about making any changes to that?
So being involved in this for a while and also sitting on other boards for a government, local government committee, I think 5 is a good number. I don't think it should be less. And I'm concerned that more would possibly add to just more confusion and more chaos. Running a town has challenges, and you can't just step into it. It took many years of understanding how government worked to be able to do that. When you start adding so many people in the pot, a lot of people don't understand how things work and what is the reason why we're doing certain things. And government doesn't always, as our administrator says, doesn't always move that quickly because it's government and there's a lot of process we have to follow that the private sector doesn't. I think adding more would be a challenge. I think 5 is a good number. I also think that giving somebody some runway to actually get some things done. So I would say maybe going to a 4-year term so people can actually get things done and not have to worry about stopping everything and focusing on running, because for the most part, we're all volunteers. And if people see me around town in meetings, this consumes a significant amount of time. I mean, it is a huge commitment in order, in my view, to be effective and understand things and to have the engagement you need. Compared to just last night when we started to introduce some of our capital program, we're getting things done at an incredibly fast pace, and getting everyone to agree or the majority to agree is a task in itself, but we're making huge strides in getting things done for the residents of Holmdel because it's the right thing to do while keeping the tax rate flat, which is an amazing accomplishment to see some of the things that we're able to do, and getting that done and having knowledge. So that's why I think maybe extending a year from running a 3-year to a 4-year would just help people, whoever's here going forward in the future, have some better understanding of what's going on, plus give them some runway to actually have time to get their hands around things and get things accomplished for the town.
Okay. Do any of the other commissioners have questions they want to raise at this point? Okay, I'm going to move on to question 7 because you also addressed question 6 just now. As you know, the township committee form of government is held on a partisan basis. This means that we have 2 local elections every year, a primary in June and a general election in November. Other forms of local government allow for council members to be elected on a nonpartisan basis. Do you have any thoughts or comments on local elections held on a nonpartisan basis, as such is done for the Board of Education?
Yeah, a couple thoughts on that. I Republican, run the Republican ticket. I've been involved in politics since I was in college, and I worked for the Speaker of the Assembly, who was at the time was a Republican. So doing this for a long time. Proud to be involved with the Republican Party, but yet there aren't decisions that I'm making at the town level that have anything to do with Republican issues at the federal level. So so you need to separate what we do, right? We're dealing with, if you're at the meeting last night, we're dealing with roads, emergency services, infrastructure, sanitary sewer, like the things that make the town run. None of them are federal issues. I'm not dealing with Social Security. I'm not dealing with unemployment. I'm not dealing with abortion. I'm not dealing with voting rights. So when you remove that, I'm not going to, whether we're partisan or nonpartisan, I'm still going to be Republican. I'm still affiliated with the Republican Party. But locally, what I think we need to focus on are who's getting things done for the town, who's making sure that, emergency services have the equipment they need. So when we're doing, 16, 18 first aid calls a day during COVID with volunteers, that they have the tools they need to get the job done, and the infrastructure in place because they're saving people's lives every day. Our fire department has done an amazing job the last few years between recruiting members and getting the services they need. They've really impressed me with everything they've been doing. Police have been stellar in everything they're doing, or OEM, the same thing. So those are things that, I could tell you story after story, about what they do and how they're saving people's lives and helping people every day in our community. And that's what's important, that things that are local. So I think people, the residents, are more concerned locally. They can still vote for whoever they want for Congress and for president and for Senate. But locally, it's really the issues here that affect everybody, their quality of life. And what I've seen is, and I've talked to many people that want to come into town can't find a house. People that are in town that maybe raise their families here, and now, their children are gone and careers have moved on. They're not leaving Holmdel because they can't find a better community. Repeat, they can't find the better community, so they're staying here, which is amazing. That's because the things we're doing, they appreciate the quality of life they have, the friends they have, and knowing that they're safe and secure with some of the assets I mentioned earlier. So those are things that are important. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican. At the end of the day, you want to make sure someone's doing that and, looking out for me locally, because we're the ones that have the most impact on people's lives and their quality of lives, because we affect everything they do and their families every single day.
Thank you, Greg. Any other questions from the commissioners?
So just to be clear, so you would favor nonpartisan elections so that we would be focused on the issues and the needs of the local community and whoever could serve those best?
Yes, whatever this committee decides is the right way to go. My view is that I am not dealing with any national level issues. I'm not changing my party affiliation no matter what this committee decides. So be Republican, so proud to be Republican, but the residents need to have the ability to elect the mayor and elect the person that they want, he or she, to serve, to lead the town. But I do believe that we need to be able to put a strong administrator in place so they can make decisions in alignment with the mayor, and have the township committee members, however many they may be, you guys decide, have input on policies and ordinances that we can put in place to, again, improve quality of life. It's local is local. It's not the same as what the Congress and Senate are doing down in Washington.
Okay, thank you, Greg. As we've already mentioned, members of the Township Committee are elected on an at-large basis. Do you have any thoughts about citizens of the township being better represented if some or all of the members of the committee were selected by wards, that is, different sections of the town?
I think that in normal course of action, I think we've had a distributed committee over the years, people living in different areas of town. I don't believe that having to have wards would be effective. We're not a large town. We're under 18,000 in the last census. We're large enough to have significant impacts on people's lives, but I think that it could restrict people. You may have two good people that may come out of one area that would eliminate that person, and I think would try to artificially manufacture someone who may not be as good of a candidate as somebody else. I think people should be able to run no matter where they live, and the residents should be able to decide based on their skills, qualifications, commitment, and then obviously once they're on the track record, are they doing the right things for the residents and helping to improve quality of life? Because that's important. From what we look at, what I focus on is everything from school age children to preschool, to the seniors in town, and trying to put programs and events together for them. And I actually had a conversation with our recreation director this afternoon, excited about some of the things we're trying to do to improve recreation programs in the town, for all ages. And we have some amazing assets in the town, and I think that this new capital bond ordinance will allow us to leverage more and give the residents some other things to do. We learned a lot during the pandemic. We certainly did, because when the state and the county shut all their parks, we opted to keep our parks and all our open space open for our residents to use. And I got calls from doctors that live in town who I've never heard of in my life, thanking me for doing that, because the comments were that the mental aspect of the pandemic being locked down could be worse than the physical aspect of getting COVID. So we're trying to enhance that, build upon that, not only with open space acquisition, but also improving some of the open space and parks and areas we have in town to give more to the residents. And that's not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's what's best for Holmdel, what's best for our residents, what's best to help people improve their quality of life. And I think at the same time, helping increase home values as well, because at the bottom line, home is probably your largest investment you ever make. And if I could maintain and grow the town, which is putting more people wanting to come into town and their homes are going for sale, it's going to continue to elevate our home price. So I think the net effect is doing the right things has a positive impact on every single resident in Holmdel.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Answer.
Yeah, there's one, Janet.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you're not finished it. I'll ask it at the end. I think I missed it earlier, so go ahead and finish.
Okay. The next question, Greg, is about petition and referendum. As you know, we have the ability here in our town to do it only for, I believe, bond ordinances. Do you think the residents should be able to have that? Other forms of government do permit it by getting a certain percentage of the voters to sign petition.
I'm in favor, as you can probably tell from my opening comment, of having more public involvement. If you saw when we did the reorg at our conference room next to the library at Bellworks, I guess in the beginning of 2020, and my remarks, I've been a big advocate supporter of our military, and I'm at every event, every ceremony in town for them. People gave their lives in order to protect our freedom. I think it's incumbent upon people that are registered voters, able to vote, to be able to go out and vote and exercise that freedom. So yes, I think it is important that the residents have the ability to say things, because they may not like something that's going on. They may want to do a course correction. So I am in favor of allowing that to happen by percentage of signatures, whatever is statutorily required, to allow that. I think the more the people get involved, the better the government's going to be going forward in our town.
Okay. Other questions? Why don't you go ahead, Jan? What do you have?
Okay, I don't think you covered this. Maybe you did. You talked about maybe a 4-year term. Did you talk about a staggered term? We ask you that? I don't think you covered that, because would you want it staggered so that everybody doesn't go at the same time?
I would say yes. I would say it makes sense to stagger. It allows the, I think for everyone to go every 4 years may be a little bit of a push, especially if the residents don't like things that are going on, that they could start course correcting things. So having rotation through every year, however it is, 1, 1, 1, 2, or whatever the numbers that you guys decide. Yeah, I think it makes sense, and it keeps it fresh, right? It allows constant change. Plus, it keeps people, I think, engaged in the process of their government, paying attention to what's going on. Some of the forums that are run locally that allow candidates to answer questions, speak. Again, as people have followed me for a while, no, it's about open and transparent, right? There's not a hidden agenda. What I've said from the beginning is kind of what I delivered. I don't have a personal agenda, and people ask me sometimes, like, why do you do it? Because honestly, I love this town, and I think that I'm trying to have a positive impact. And I said, when I stop having a positive impact, it's time for me to kind of leave and go on. But the amount of time and effort that's put into the job requires a lot of dedication. So I think that every year would give people a kind of a good sense of what's going on, what they're seeing, and staggered terms would make a lot of sense.
Okay. We're kind of at the end of the question list. We had one last question, which I think you've covered a lot of the material, but I'll ask it anyway, just in case you want to summarize. But if you could make any changes to our form of government, what would they be and why?
As I said from the beginning, and I've been pretty vocal last year when we put this on the referendum, that I believe that we are due for a change. I was extremely unhappy when Holmdel was in the papers for all the wrong reasons, with monies being spent without authorization, monies being spent, taxpayer money being spent on projects that weren't approved, that never had township community approval. And I said that this form of government is not working, because when you're wasting taxpayer money, it's money we're never going to get back. And we need a better form of government in our town. We have a town that is engaged with their government. I'm impressed with some of the questions that come in, the emails I get from people that are involved. And right now, I think is the time. They said sometimes timing's got to be right. And I felt the time was right to kind of put this forth to the people and allow the people of Holmdel to decide whether they want more democratic control of their local government. And I strongly believe, from the comments I've seen, that people do. It's never a bad thing to give more power to the people, because that's what this country was based on. And I think our township committee, from when this town, I mean, I've spoken to people that lived in Holmdel years ago when it was just a small farming community, and it's changed. We're different. We still have that. We're still trying to keep that farming kind of bucolic nature to it, but we've grown. We're a much bigger town. We're a hub. We're looked on by other towns as a model for what we've done. We've got recognized for our vaccination program at the state level, for what we're doing for the seniors and the disadvantaged that we have challenges during the pandemic when vaccines were scarce. So, and we're being mirrored by other towns that they're trying to copy some of the things we do, which is a great compliment for what people at our town hall have been doing. So I felt that it was the right time to do this. I'm a big proponent of allowing our residents to make this change. So in 2022, we did something that's going to benefit Holmdel for forever going forward.
Okay, very good. Appreciate it very much. Is there anything else from the committee, from the commission?
Yeah, I do, Jerry. Just want to clarify some. Mayor Bontempo, I know you made a big point about that you've been a long-time Republican, and you just mentioned give more democratic control. I just want to make sure you clarify that you meant Democratic with a small D, and you meant, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that because what your comment meant was, it sounded like more power to the people. And so I just want to make sure that we're not, at least I'm not hearing anything that wasn't what you really meant.
Yeah, correct. Thank you, Chairman. So I'm not advocating for my opponents on the Democratic Party to win. I'm for the democratic process in general, that more people get involved in more of a positive democracy, so people have more control. Being lived it, I think that, not knowing who the mayor is going to be or being decided in a room somewhere by people that may be outside of Holmdel is not what's best for Holmdel. Holmdel residents know what's best for Holmdel, and the power should be in their hands. And the process should be a democratic process, not I want Democrats to take over the Holmdel Township.
Thank you, Greg. All right, Ken, I'm turning it back over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mayor Bontempo. I know you got a really busy schedule, and I'm sorry.
I'd just like to mention that there's one person that has a question specific to Greg, so perhaps you would like to give Greg the opportunity to answer that.
I'm sorry, you're talking about what, the attendees?
Yeah, the fourth one, John Kasparis.
Okay, I have two individuals that, okay, this is, we normally save things for questions or comments at the end, really, but I will make a, so I have two that have their hands raised.
It's John that seems to want to pose a question to Greg. You see that one?
I'm looking at the attendees, the participants. Are you looking at somewhere else, looking at Q&A?
There's Q&A.
Look at the Q&A, the
Oh,
Q&A.
Yeah, that's, okay. So we'll do that. Normally, this is not it's questions from the commissioners, but so this is a little bit ordinary. But if you don't mind, Mayor Bontempo, there is a question that had been posted on the Q&A. It says, you mentioned the issue that you're working on at the local level as not being national issues that are influenced by party affiliations or views. Yet you also mentioned things like infrastructure and taxes. Are these not national topics?
Yeah, partisan.
I'm sorry, partisan topics. There we go.
So we're not dealing with we're dealing with a fairly small local budget, right? So when you pay your taxes, roughly 17% of your every dollar goes to the towns, roughly 65 goes to school, and the other 17-ish% goes to county, and there's some miscellaneous called 2 or 3% for other prior approved referendum, could be county or local level. So small percentage. So we do a lot with a small percent of the tax dollars that we receive, and been able to maintain a flat budget at a town without decreasing services has been a huge accomplishment. And I think we are going to be on our 6th year now, being able to do so without cutting services, and actually putting significant amount of money in infrastructure is huge. I'm not dealing with raising the debt ceiling, right? The federal government. I'm not borrowing more money that's adding more debt. We are balancing our budget, so we're dealing with things locally, and that's my point. Yeah, taxes are, there's local taxes and you have federal taxes, and we're not raising taxes, which I think is a huge accomplishment. Every town's doing the same thing, but we're not on the same level playing field as Congress or the Senate. We're dealing with the same amount of products and services, but for the tax dollars we spend, we're providing probably the most services that people generally receive for the local services that live here in Holmdel. So hopefully that answered the question. What was the other part? Was it taxes and infrastructure?
No, it was really that some of those issues which you do deal with on a local basis,
Yeah.
are they not national or partisan. I think you addressed those the questions. Okay, I just want to point out, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor Bontempo. You know, the hearing here is for purpose of the Charter Study Commission to gather facts, to study our form of government, and then, you know, where areas for improvement and explore alternatives. So, and the public is, you know, we welcome comments and so on. As you know, last week we had a public hearing and asked for input. And then at the end of all meetings, there's a public comment session. But this is not the forum where, unlike maybe the zoning board you're thinking of, where certain things the public normally do not get to ask questions of our guest speakers. So if you got comments and things like that, we're going to ask you just kind of, if you could say that we do have a public comment session at the end. So, all right. Again, thank you, Mayor Bontempo. So
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
our next speaker is Ed Sosdelli. Ed, I made you as co-host, so you should be able to share your screen for your presentation. So for those of you who don't know, Ed is actually he's from the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. Within there's a division called Local Government Services. And Ed has a little bit of intro background on himself within his presentation, I believe. But I just want to mention that you know, he does have in addition to BA in government and politics, he has a master's in public administration. He is a state monitor for the New Jersey state government for a number of cities, as well as a municipal technical advisor. But equally as important, he has vast experience as in township administrator, as a township manager, and under different forms of government. Maybe with that, let me, because I do know that you have a little bit of introduction and you have a lot of information to share with us. I'm going to turn that over to you, Ed. Go ahead, please.
Okay, can everyone hear me and can you see my screen?
Yes.
We can hear you and we can see your screen.
Great, great. So let me start off by saying well, I want to laud the commission because, you know, it takes a lot of courage and putting yourself out there to go on the ballot and volunteer to do this and sit through these night meetings and potentially change your form of government. That's an important thing. It hasn't been changed since forever. And if you do decide to change it, it may last for, you know, 100 years. So it's an important thing. And you guys seem to be handling it very professionally. I wasn't nervous to do this presentation. I was pretty relaxed. And then I read your guys' bio, attorney, PhD in mathematics, Wall Street bankers. Now I'm nervous. So I'll do the best I can. But that's a compliment to you guys. So let's see. So specifically, my name's Ed Sosdelli. I'm from DCA, and specifically the Local Assistance Bureau. You know, the old adage, we're here from the government, we're here to help. So we're from the Local Assistance Bureau. And what I'm doing today, or what I was invited to do, was to participate in your phase 2, the Holmdel Charter Study Commission, phase 2, reviewing the alternatives. So that's what is going to be the primary focus. I'll talk about a few other things, and I'm going to move fast, but I can stop or slow down at any time. When I go to these things, I always want to know who's up here preaching to me, and, you know, who am I to give you technical advice. So I want to have a slide in there for who I am. As the chairman said, and thank you for that nice introduction, I have a master's in public administration. I was a military officer for 7 years on active duty. I came out of the military and I became a municipal manager in New Jersey. For 20 years, I was in 3 different towns. And then in 2011, I joined DCA, and I'm a state monitor. I go to cities that either are under state supervision or were under state supervision and try to get them straightened out. I have a few certifications and I teach a few classes. The other slide I put in here is, because I thought it might be germane to this discussion, is these are forms of government that I either was the administrator in or manager in, or I was the state monitor assigned. So I have experience in all these forms of government: township form, borough form, city form, small city, mayor council, council manager, and mayor council administrator. That middle column where I put authority, that refers to the where does the business administrator, and I heard Mayor Bontempo talk a lot about the importance of the administrator, where does the administrator get their authority? And in those forms of government, it comes sometimes from the ordinance, and the other forms of government, it comes from the statute, not the ordinance. That'll be more important as we go along. But I just thought it may help you to know that I have experience in these form of governments. So here's Holmdel. You know it way better than I know it. I circled population because that's going to be significant when we go over the available forms of government. You're over 12,000, so that's going to knock out one of the options. What I'm going to do tonight is give you an intro and a little bit of background. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on phase one because I read your webpage, I read some of your minutes. I know you've spent a lot of time on phase one already, but just to ground everybody, so we're all starting from the same point, I have a couple of slides on the Township Committee form. Then we'll talk mostly about the phase two, the alternative forms. Then at the end, I'm going to talk about similarities and differences. I put open forum for questions at the end, but really the commission can ask me any question you want at any time. So just stop me on any slide. We don't have to wait till the end. This presentation is for you guys. The other thing I want to say is the form of government is very important, but it's not a substitute for electing and hiring the right people. Like as Thomas Jefferson said, you deserve the government you elect. So yes, you have to have the right form, but you also, the voters have a responsibility to put the right people in there. And then the elected officials have a responsibility to make sure you hire experienced, qualified people. As Mayor Bontempo alluded to several times, running a municipal government, it's complex. There's a lot of moving parts. You need experience. You need to know what you're doing. So it all goes together. I put two quotes in here from private sector, successful business people, Lee Iacocca, the importance of hiring bright people. Same thing with Steve Jobs, the importance of hiring smart people. And I can't stress that enough because I see many times where people select the right form of government. And then if you put square pegs in round holes, it's not going to work. So why are we here? Why is DCA here? So I want to just make that perfectly clear. You don't need our permission. We're not going to put our thumb on the scale. You don't have to submit anything to us. The only reason we're here is because your chairman requested technical assistance. This is completely local home rule. You guys passed a referendum. The commission will decide. If you decide to change it, it'll go on the ballot. Your voters will pick. And that's why we're here, just to give you the most information to make an educated decision. So there's 12 forms of government in New Jersey, right? And fear not, we're not going to go through all 12 forms. We don't need to. I circled your current form, township. And as one of the commissioners alluded to, you were incorporated as a township in 1857, and you've been that form of government until this day. So it hasn't been anything else. If you want to get an idea where the other 565 municipalities are, these are the forms of government and how they break down. And I sent a hard copy to Chairman G, so you don't have to take notes. Everybody can get a hard copy from him if you want to refer to this later on. And for this second slide shows of the towns who changed to a different form of government, what did they change to? And that's what this slide shows you. We're going to spend a little bit more time on this slide later on, but as you can see, most switched to either mayor, council, or council manager. A few switched to small municipality, and much less few switched to mayor, council, administrator. So let's just spend a couple of slides talking about your present form of government, which from listening to you guys, you already get this 100%. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. You have a 5-member governing body. They're elected at large, 3-year terms. You have an election every year. It's a partisan form. The mayor is appointed by the governing body, not by the public. The mayor presides at meetings, votes as a member, but has no other special powers. All legislative and executive powers, including appointment, are exercised by the committee as a whole. I put an asterisk there because your form of government allows for the appointment of an administrator, and it allows the committee to delegate certain executive responsibilities to that administrator if they choose to. If they don't do that, then it belongs to the committee. And the final bullet is they must act as a body. There's no individual authority. The committee has to act as a body. So Holmdel did, by reading your ordinance, it looks like in 2003, you established an ordinance for township administrator. It's chapter 2-5. Much of the day-to-day administration of government is delegated to the administrator. And then if you were to look at 2-5, 10.1 through 10.12, it lists all the things that they delegated to that administrator to do. And the crux of it is purchasing, budget, personnel, grants, communication, what I refer to as the nuts and bolts of government. So you have that in place now, but that's not required. You have it because the committee chose to do it. So this slide talks about the weaknesses of the township committee form of government. And as I said on the slide, weaknesses are subjective. Some people may look at this and think it's a strength, not a weakness, but generally, this is what the accepted weaknesses are. The mayor is not elected by the voters. There's no option for nonpartisan elections. There's an election every year. There's no INR, which we referred to, and I'm going to spend more time on this later, but there's no initiative and referendum option. It lacks this form of government lacks the requirement for a business administrator. If the committee does create one, there's no duty specified in the statute. They only have the duties that the committee delegates to them. It's government by committee, which is always frustrating. I heard the mayor speak to that. And the size is restricted to 5 elected officials. So I think you guys know all that. I want to talk about, I just have a short definition section. I want to talk about 2 definitions because these are important when we talk about the alternate forms. We've been throwing around partisan versus nonpartisan, and we've been throwing around INR, initiative and referendum. So I want to define both of those. So I think everybody knows what we mean by partisan. You have partisan form now. So your candidates run with a party affiliation. There's a primary election in June. There's a general election in November, and you're on the ballot with a party affiliation. If you were a nonpartisan, and I put the statute reference there if somebody wants to read more about it. If the commission chooses to switch to nonpartisan, the candidates do not run with a party affiliation. There's no primary election. The general election can be either in May or November. The candidates are on the ballot with a slogan. The slogan can't exceed 6 words, and it can't identify the party affiliation. What I put over here on the side is just some real world slogans that I pulled off of other nonpartisan ballots, focused on the future, choose forward, strong and free, fighting for families. That's what would appear under your name on the ballot, a slogan. So when we talk about INR, and somebody on the commission, or maybe it was Mayor Bontempo, referred to this, this whole concept of INR, it gives more authority, it gives more power to the residents. So first off, in initiative, it gives citizens the ability to put measures on the ballot. If they get the right signatures and they go through the right procedure, they can put something on the ballot. I gave you a couple examples at the bottom. If a municipality wanted to change from a type 1 school district to a type 2 school district, if they wanted to move nonpartisan elections from May to November, they wouldn't have to wait for the committee to do it or the council to do it. The citizens could do it through an initiative. And the referendum part of that is kind of the opposite. It acts as a veto to the governing body. So it gives the citizens the ability to reject an ordinance. If the governing body passed an ordinance and a certain percentage of the voters don't like that, they can gather petitions. There's a process you have to go through, and they can get that ordinance suspended until another process is in place to either put it on the ballot or have the governing body revisit it. But the bottom line is it gives more power to the voters to put things on the ballot or to veto things that the governing body is trying to do or has done. So now let's get to the purpose of phase 2, which is to start looking at the alternative forms of government. And it sounds really complicated when you start it, but when you boil it down, it gets narrower. So I circled the only forms you're allowed to even consider. And those are the Faulkner Act forms, which you'll see OMCL, optional municipal charter law, and Faulkner Act used interchangeably. It's the same thing. So those are the forms those are the only forms that you are allowed to change to. Of those forms, this is a slide from the beginning of the presentation. Small municipality is not an option because you have to be under 12,000 population to be eligible to choose the small municipality. So now you're down to 3. And as you can see, I said I wasn't going to put my thumb on the scale, and so I'm not going to do that, but less than 2% of the municipalities who chose to switched to mayor, council, administrator. I think the slide speaks for itself, but we'll cover it anyway because it's eligible. Small municipality form, it's here if you want to read about it later, but you're not eligible for it, so I don't want to waste the commissioner's time. Your population's too high. So the 3 forms that you have available in phase 2 to really dig into and evaluate are going to be mayor, council, council manager, and mayor, council, administrator. I'm going to take the one that is least popular first. The mayor, council, administrator. As I said, less than 2% of the towns that have gone through what you guys are going through have decided to go with this. And I have worked with Berkeley Heights. They're one of the towns. There's 3 municipalities that have this form. Berkeley Heights is one of them. I have worked there. They're still confused about that form of government. It's confusing. And there's not a lot on it because there's only 3 municipalities that have it. But here's what the statute says. It's basically the borough form of government with a mandated administrator. Right now, the traditional borough form of government does not require an administrator. You can have one if the borough council wants it, but it's not required. This form takes the borough form and mandates an administrator. So it's a mayor with 6 council members, 7 total. They're elected at large in partisan elections. The mayor is directly elected to a 4-year term, and the council serves a 3-year term, staggered. There's an election every year. So I'm not trying to poo-poo this, but from listening to your remarks and the questions that you had, I don't think this embodies the things that you're looking for, but let me finish up on it. So here's the other pieces to it. The mayor presides at the meeting, but only votes to break ties. The mayor does have veto power, but can be overridden. The mayor appoints the administrator with advice and consent of council. Council has no administrative duties and no appointive power. Council chooses a president to preside in the mayor's absence. The administrator is appointed by the mayor, but can be removed by 2/3 of the council. The administrator administers the business affairs of the municipality. I put that in quotes because that's what the statute says. And the voters do have INR. They do have initiative and referendum powers. So in summary, and I know I raced through this form, but the borough form mandates an administrator. There's elections every year. They can only be partisan. It does include INR, and it's only used by 3 municipalities. So I went fast through that, but if you have questions, everybody good, we'll keep going. All right, so we have these 3
Actually,
yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. It's sort of back on the basic thing. So in terms of our deliberations, you said we're only allowed to consider these Faulkner forms of government. So if we wanted to say, oh, maybe we should switch to being a borough, that's not an option for us as part of it?
No.
So
I don't want to play attorney. Mr. Starker's here and Mr. Starkey's here. I don't want to play attorney, but no, you're not allowed to.
I'm in full agreement, by the way. That is correct.
Okay, so I actually thought we were going to be choosing among 12 or 11, considering.
That's why I said it. That's why I said it narrows. It narrows quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
The state and the legislature, when they put this this act in 1953, they want towns to move to these more modern forms of government.
Oh,
the only towns that can have these traditional forms are the towns that had them before.
Okay, so those are like grandfather types, and if you want to do something new, choose one of these new types. Or you could go for, I guess you could go for special, and then you'd have to get special dispensation.
You know, I'm also doing this exercise in Red Bank, and one of the commissioners asked me about a special charter, and I said, if you want it done in this century, you probably don't want to go for a special charter. Right. It requires a legislative, an act of the legislature.
Yes, so I read that. Okay. All right. Okay, thanks.
Right. No, but it's a good question because a lot of people think that, oh, maybe we'll switch to borough, maybe we'll switch to the wall shack, maybe, right, you can't do that. So good question. So we raced through. All right, so we're back to here. So I put a question mark here. And so we're going to focus on the, obviously by far, the 2 most common that people who have gone through what you guys are going through come to the conclusion that they either want to do mayor council or they want to do council manager. So let's take these in a little bit more in depth, and I'll go a little slower. So
Just a clarification, we have not come to any conclusion.
Understood. Understood. So here we are. So, right, because you can keep what you have. You don't have to change anything. You can come, you can keep what you have.
Yeah.
So, all right, so so as I said, the towns that are going through what you're going through, most of them switched to either mayor council or council manager. So let's look at the mayor council form of government. And as I said, OMCL and Faulkner Act are used interchangeably. I put the statute up here if you want to read more about it, because obviously I just picked highlights from the statute. So let's look at the mayor position in the mayor council. That's known as a strong mayor form of government. You hear that term thrown around, weak mayor, strong mayor. This is of strong mayor form. The mayor is directly elected for 4 years. It's designed for the mayor to be independent of council and in charge of the administration of the municipality. The mayor has the right to speak at council meetings, but he has no vote, does not need to attend meetings. He doesn't sit at the dais. He doesn't preside over the meeting. The mayor is not part of the governing body at council meetings. But the mayor does have veto power over ordinances. So when you look at the council and the mayor council form, it can be 5, 7, or 9. They can be elected at large or from wards, and they're elected for 4 years. Council is limited to legislative functions only. There's no executive and no administrative authority for council. Council does have power of the purse. So the mayor will recommend a budget to council, and then council can reduce line items in the mayor's budget with a majority vote, or they can increase line items in the mayor's budget, but to increase a line item, they need a 2/3 vote. And the council can also override the mayor's veto with a 2/3 vote. So you have, so the mayor presents a budget and a budget address to council, and then council can revise it based on what I just said. If wards are chosen, right, you don't have to have wards, but if wards are chosen, you have to follow this chart. Just to make the example easy, let's assume, let's look at 7, if you wanted to have 7. So if you chose 7, then you'd have to have 4 wards and 3 at large. If you chose one of the other ones, you'd have to follow this chart. This is from the statute.
Ed, I don't know if you know the answer to this question or not. If at some point, if the commission does decide to look at that, the wards are drawn by who has the responsibility to draw the wards?
I'm going to defer that to Mr. Starkey. I don't know who draws the wards.
There is a, if the question is successful, there is a, I think it's called a ward districting commission that's formed. And I believe that is composed of the county clerk, the municipal clerk, and you know what, I forget who the other people, there are a couple other people by their office that are on that committee to draw the ward lines.
Okay. Yeah, it's not a consideration. I was just curious. I figured Ed would know that off the top of their head. Sorry to put you on the spot there, Ed.
Oh, that's okay. So the summary of the roles, when we think about municipal government, we think about an executive function, a legislative function, and then an administrative function. So in this form of government, the mayor has the executive function. So the mayor would do the hiring, the appointing. The legislative function would be done by the council, the ordinances, the resolutions, the budget, the power to tax, borrowing money, bonding. The administrative function of running the day-to-day business would be the business administrator. And that's by the statute. Some other considerations with this form of government, mayor council form. Elections can be, you have a lot of choices. Elections can be partisan or nonpartisan. So they can be in May or they can be in November. They can be at large, or you can have wards. The terms can be concurrent, and I've heard somebody speak to that earlier. I threw an example in here, the city of Vineland in Cumberland County. They have a mayor and 5-person council. All 6 are on the same slate every 4 years. So it's conceivable that you could have 6 brand new people walking in the door on January 1st. So that's concurrent. Or they can be staggered every 2 years. I put Perth Amboy as an example. So they have a mayor and a 5-person council. So the mayor and 2 council run, I said together, but I really mean at the same time, not together, run at the same time. And the other 3 council run 2 years later. So every 2 years, you have 3 people on the ballot in that example. Some other considerations in this form of government: the mayor has no formal role to play at meetings and frequently does not attend. Council president controls the meeting agenda and controls the meeting. Sometimes this can result in an atmosphere of contention and conflict between the mayor and council. And I'm being as diplomatic as I can, because sometimes you have council doing their own thing, not including the mayor, and then he gets mad, and when they send it up, he vetoes it. And same thing, the mayor gets frustrated because he wants to put resolutions and ordinances on the agenda, and he can't. Only the council president can do that. So that is a sticking point between mayor and council in this form of government. The mayor cannot introduce resolutions or ordinances nor place things on the agenda.
I'm sorry, question to back up a little bit. So you mentioned, the separation of executive, legislative, and administrative, and no, you can stay on that slide. So if the council under this particular form of government says that, I'm just going to make up an example, hypothetically, if they said that we believe the residents will benefit and actually desire more recreational things, and maybe they have certain things in mind. It's hypothetically say that more parks, more trails, more walking, hiking, certain things. And they said, we're going to introduce a bond ordinance to allow for better and more recreational improvements. And that ordinance gets passed. And assuming the mayor does not veto that, let's say hypothetically, but he or she has the executive power to implement that particular policy, if you will. But let's say the individual decide that, I think we got more trails than we need. And I want to do other recreation. I want to do a bike path or something like that. That may not have been the intent, but something, whatever it is, something that may have been different than the legislative intent. Is that a possible scenario? And 2, how does a conflict like that resolve itself, or does it?
Right. Yeah. So it wouldn't be a conflict because let me try to rephrase that. So because council controls the purse, they control the budget. So if a bond ordinance passes for recreation and council in the budget approves a budget that has $100,000 to rehabilitate Memorial Park, then, and it passes and it doesn't get vetoed, then the mayor and the business administrator have to do that. Like, that's policy. Okay. So, I mean, that's part of, when we talk about executive function, part of the executive function in the statute is the mayor has to carry out he takes an oath to abide by the laws and the ordinances of the municipality. And so a resolution and ordinance, he's obligated to follow that. So, yeah, so the business administrator and or the mayor would have to, if that got approved, if it was funded, it was in the budget, then it would be executed. Let me give an example of like a simpler example, like no parking. So the council decides we have a parking problem on this street and we're going to pass a no parking ordinance on, River Street. So they pass a no parking ordinance. So that's the legislative function. It's passed. So now the mayor, the executive function would be, he has to either hire people or designate employees to that task. The administrative function would be for the administrator to make sure it gets done, the money gets collected, somebody's checking the meters or the boxes and, collecting the money and issuing the citations. So that's how that would work. And the mayor doesn't have the ability to ignore properly executed legislation.
So when you say properly executed, I guess it sounds like the key is that the legislative intent should be very clear. So as an example, in a bond ordinance, for certain things, it's got to be pretty clear that what that is. So does that need to be from a legal standpoint within the documentation, or does the actual meetings and discussion of that, does that give
I don't want to get too deep down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, okay.
Where I'm
Yep,
getting
you're right.
where I'm getting hung up is when you say bond ordinance. I've seen bond ordinances that are 20 years old. So just because you pass a bond ordinance, that's not put into the, so that gives the town the authority to borrow the money. But so it has to be put in the budget. There has to be positions put in the salary ordinance, positions created, a salary in the salary ordinance, money put in the budget. Then the business administrator and the executive can execute the function. But just passing the bond ordinance doesn't really obligate them to take any action until it gets put in the budget.
You're right. I stand corrected. Absolutely. So until it's actually appropriated to some other form, I get that. 100%. Okay, but you're right. I'll probably get into the weeds a little bit, but I think it's at least for me, maybe the other commissioners, just to make sure we understand the separation of the power between executive, legislative, and administrative under this particular form of government. I think it is an important part of it. But yeah, please go on. Thank you.
And as a city manager and as an administrator, I've had that situation where the governing body had a 5-4 decision or a 4-3 decision where something passed, and then I'll have one of the minority members the next day come into my office and say, I don't want those soccer fields built. Well, it's too late. We had that debate, and we're going to build the soccer field.
Can I just ask one other question? You mentioned the council president. Does he function similarly to the way our mayor does under the township form of government, that he runs?
When it comes to the meeting part, yes.
Right.
When it comes to the meeting part, the council president would sit down with the clerk, put the agenda together, call the meeting to order, run the meeting.
And is he elected by the council as in the township committee?
Yes, he's chosen. The council president's chosen from amongst the council.
Okay, thank you.
Because it could be a she, right, Janet?
Yes.
Of course.
It's right. So I think I left off here. So council, no. Oh, so we're switching. So this was the last slide. So mayor, council. So now we're going to talk about council manager form, which is the second most popular one that people switch to, that municipalities switch to. So you'll see some similarities here. The governing body can be 5, 7, or 9. The mayor and council manager, the mayor is part of the governing body. So when we talk about the 5, 7, or 9, that includes the mayor. The mayor can be directly elected or selected by council, either way. The mayor presides at council meetings. So the mayor sits at the meeting, does the agenda, presides at the meeting. All terms are 4 years. Elections can be concurrent or staggered every 2 years.
So I'm sorry, can we just go back there? Just want to make sure for my own clarification. So under this particular, actually under both, because of the fact the elections, the terms are 4 years and they could be concurrent or staggered. There is actually at a minimum 1 off year if it's on a staggered basis, right? Because the elections are every 2 years. Or if they're concurrent, they actually could be 3 years in which there's no local election. Is that right?
4. There could be 4.
Well, if it's a 4-year term, there are 3 years in between the elections, right?
Of
Because
4
the
years.
4th year is election year. But okay, but there is an off year if it's every 2 years where there is no local election.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the example I gave of Vineland, they only have a local election every 4 years.
If you're on concurrent basis, yes.
We good?
We're good.
So this slide looks very similar to the other slide because it's the same. If council manager, if you decide to have wards, they're not required, but if you decide to have wards, you got to follow the statute, the chart that's in the statute. If there are wards and you choose staggered elections, then the at-large will run in 1 election and the ward members will run 2 years later. So some other considerations with council manager. The council, which again includes the mayor, is the legislative body. Council only makes a small number of appointments. This surprises folks, but the council only appoints the manager, the clerk, the assessor, the attorney, and boards and commissions. The manager appoints all other positions that are created by the council. The council
Just to
appoints
be
them.
clear, I'm sorry. So when you say boards and commission, you're talking about planning board, zoning board, and commission.
Recreation, historic, environmental.
Environment,
other-
right?
yeah.
Okay.
All the other boards and commissions. The manager doesn't make appointments to those kind of boards. He or she hires employees.
Right. I just want to clarify that. Okay.
So council appoints a manager to be the chief executive to carry out the will of the council. Again, sometimes you think you hear that one of the downsides is that the manager can be a dictator and do whatever he or she wants. That's not true. The manager has to stay within the bounds of what council has given in the ordinance, has given in the budget, has given in the salary ordinance. So the manager's job, he or she, is to carry out the will of the council, not substitute their own judgment for the council's judgment.
Question.
Mhm.
So is this manager effectively the administrator that's required by statute? Or is this okay,
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it's the business administrator, but in that form of government, it's called the manager. Council manager.
Okay.
So when I was in Evesham, I was the city manager in Evesham. Evesham appointed me as the city manager. They appointed the other and then I appointed the other folks. That is the BA for all practical purposes. I even use that term interchangeably in here, which I shouldn't, because a manager has certain statutory authorities that a business administrator doesn't. But that is the BA. So when we look at these roles and we look at the legislative function, that's done by the council, which again includes the mayor. The executive and the administrative function is done by the manager. So the manager has more authority in this form of government. The manager is the chief executive and appoints all the subordinate personnel. Any personnel that the council puts in the budget and puts in the salary ordinance, the manager appoints. The manager prepares and submits a budget to council. Council can amend it, modify it, revise it, do whatever they want with it, but the manager prepares it and makes a recommendation. The manager must attend all council meetings and may take part in discussions, but does not vote. Doesn't have a right to vote and doesn't vote. The manager serves at the pleasure of the council and can be removed by a simple majority. I underlined that because you by now have figured out that all the other forms, it takes 2/3 to get rid of the business administrator. But because the manager has more authority in this form, they make it easier for the council to get rid of that person if they're not towing the line or acting.
I'm sorry, Ed, I missed that point. So in a mayor council form of government, the mayor has the option to hire a administrative person, administrator, but that can't be removed, or can it be removed by council with a 2/3?
Yeah, well, first off, so let's start at the beginning. The mayor in the mayor council form, the mayor appoints a BA, but it has to receive advice and consent from the council, has to be confirmed from council.
Okay.
So the mayor just can't put in there whoever he wants. He needs, if there's 7 members on council, he needs 4. It has to be confirmed by council. So once that person's in there, then the council can remove them with a 2/3 vote.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. There's a few other, the solicitor can fill in the details if you need it, but you have to give that person 3 months pay and some severance, but you can get rid of them with a 2/3 vote.
Right.
Can you give us an idea of what the powers are of the manager that we don't currently have in our business administrator?
Without having the ordinance in front of us, that would be hard to do, but I'll answer it this way. You have an ordinance administrator. So your administrator only has the authority that the council gave him when they created that ordinance in 2003. He or she, I know it's a she right now.
Mhm.
They only have that. I don't know exactly what those powers are, but they only have those powers, and they can be changed. As councils come in, they can take some power away, give some power back by amending the ordinance. You can't do that with a manager. The manager's power comes from the statute. So the manager, hires the employees, hires the department heads. When I had a CFO vacancy in Evesham, I would advertise and I would interview and I would hire another CFO. Like the council didn't get involved in that.
Statute being set by the state law you're talking about?
Yeah, the statute would be that statute that I put up here, council manager 40:69A 81. So yes, that's a state statute. Right, exactly. That's a state statute. So you couldn't pass a municipal ordinance that contradicted a state statute.
Got it.
So that's the big difference between a manager and a business administrator.
Okay.
So let me, where did I leave off? So manager summary of roles, right? So that's why they make it easier to get rid of, because I was both. I was a business administrator and I was also a manager. And trust me, I mean, the managers are aware that if they don't keep a majority of council happy, they're not going to last very long. So, you know, they understand that. So what do they have in common? So these two of the most common forms, what are some of the things they have in common, and what are some of the things that they don't have in common? What do they have in common? The mayor can be directly elected. It can be partisan or nonpartisan. Elections can be every 2 years, or they can be concurrent. That's in both forms. Both forms have INR. Both forms you can have at large, or you can have wards. And in both forms, you can have 5, 7, or 9 on council. And both require a municipal manager, but to split hairs, in the mayor council, it's a business administrator, which has a little less authority. And in council manager, it's a manager. But we just generically refer to that as a municipal manager.
Let me ask you, what does it take to make changes to this once you put it in place? So if you decide you want to directly elect the mayor starting off, but then after several years, you decide you don't want to do that anymore, how do you make that change? Or you want to go from partisan to nonpartisan or back again?
If you're staying within, I'm Mr. Starkey, I'm not playing attorney, so jump in anytime you want. But if you're not changing the form of government, if you're just changing things within the form, it doesn't need another charter study commission. It can just be done by referendum. It has to go on a ballot, and it can be done by referendum.
Okay.
As long as you're not changing the form, if you're just tweaking these things within the form.
Right. Okay.
Yes, and I agree with that. Now, but one thing that's important though is any changes like you're suggesting have to go on the ballot for the voters to decide on it. So if you want to change, from a ward to at large, the voters have to approve that, and if they don't, it doesn't get changed. So question has to go on the ballot.
Okay.
Right. But as long as you're staying within the form, you don't need another charter study commission.
Okay.
So these differences, let's go through them. In mayor council, the mayor is not on the council. So when I was the state monitor in Atlantic City, Mayor Langford, Mayor Guardian, Mayor Small, they don't even go to the council meetings. Like the council president runs the meeting, the mayor doesn't even go. I don't know that that's the case in all towns, but that's how it was there. The mayor's not part of the council. In council manager, the mayor is part of the council and presides over the meeting. Number 2, the mayor has no legislative duties in the mayor council form. He can't introduce a resolution. He could have he or she could have the best idea in the world. But if he can't get a council person to make a motion and somebody else to second it, it never gets to the floor to be discussed. The mayor has no legislative duties. The council manager, the mayor does have legislative responsibilities and legislative duties. The mayor can put something on the floor. The mayor can introduce a resolution. Number 3, the mayor is the chief executive and appoints a BA, business administrator, to assist and run the Department of Administration pursuant to that form of government. In council manager, the council appointed manager is the chief executive and makes those decisions about hiring subordinate personnel. Number 4, business administrator has a 4-year term that runs concurrent with the mayor. So let me talk a little bit about that. It's just inherent in the process. So the term he or she's term runs concurrent. So the mayor appoints with advice and consent of the council, and that person knows that their tenure is tied to the mayor's reelection. So sometimes council feels like the BA favors the mayor because their success is tied to the mayor, and maybe they're not serving the whole council, they're cheating towards the mayor, which may happen if the BA knows that their term runs concurrent with the mayor. If the mayor doesn't get reelected, your term is over. So that could be problematic. Over here on this side of the equation with council manager, that doesn't come into play. The manager, I put BA here, but you guys are sharp. The manager term is indefinite, serves at the pleasure of the governing body, works for the entire governing body, and knows that a simple majority can remove him or her. So that's a pretty significant difference. And I'm sure you're going to talk to mayors from these former governments. You can ask them about that. Number 5, the BA can be removed by a 2/3 vote. We already talked about that. In this form of government, it only takes a majority in council manager to remove the manager. An elected official, in this case, the mayor, is responsible for day-to-day operations in the mayor council. He does have a BA to assist him, but he's responsible. He has the executive responsibility. In this form of government, an appointed nonpartisan professional manager is responsible for day-to-day operations. Typically, it's a person with a master's in an MPA, master's in public administration. Doesn't have to be, but usually it is. And that person is responsible for those, responsible to council for those. So I tried to find a chart that would show that, but I think you guys get it. So if you look at a mayor council, the voters elect a mayor, and the mayor supervises the administrative departments. He does have a BA, which is one of the departments, but the mayor makes those appointments, is the hiring authority for those folks, and the city council is the legislative. Over here on a council manager plan, the voters elect a council, they appoint a city manager, and then the manager runs the administrative departments, hires those people, and runs it consistent with the policy set by council. So I feel like I raced through that really fast, but we did phase 1. We reviewed your township form. We reviewed the alternative forms. We talked about the mayor council, the council manager, and the mayor council administrator, and we reviewed some commonalities and differences. So I think that's it. Questions?
So if I may ask, it seems like in the situation where you have the council manager, mayor council, the mayor's doing a lot of work. In those towns, are they often paid a lot? Because it does seem like they're doing more than in other situations, in other types of government.
And that's a great question. In the larger towns like Atlantic City, Perth, Amboy, that have those form of governments, the mayor, well, I'll just talk about Atlantic City. The mayor makes $145,000 and it's a full-time position. Trenton, the mayor makes similar money and it's a full-time position. In the smaller towns that adopt this, it's not a full-time position. Although the mayor has that responsibility, he or she delegates a lot of it to the BA to handle in their stead. So I've seen different versions of that, but in bigger cities, it's a full-time, it's full-time mayor, and they do get a full-time salary, and they could, there's nothing to stop them in a smaller municipality from getting a full-time salary and being there full-time to oversee things.
I'm sorry, would that be an ordinance passed by the council then? If we, let's say hypothetically, we decide go mayor council form of government, then the council would decide on that through an ordinance or something like that?
Right, the council would decide the salary ordinance. Right, so they would set the salary for the mayor for all the positions. The statute, to Ms. Commissioner Burke's question, and again, I have no problem being overruled by Mr. Starkey, but the statute doesn't talk about whether it is full-time or not full-time. It just outlines what the duties are. Some of the cities, it just turns out that way, but I don't think the statute dictates that.
Yeah, you're correct.
I have a question. So in these Faulkner forms of government, you have these various options that you can choose. If our committee chooses to make a change and recommend a change, do we have to recommend a change with all the options chosen? Or can we recommend a change and have a referendum on the change and then have subtending questions about the options?
I'm shucking that to Mr. Starkey.
Yeah, that it is all on you. You need to make a specific recommendation with specific options to the voters, and the voters vote on that recommendation as a whole. They do not pick and choose. So it's either, you say mayor and council, partisan, nonpartisan, ward or at large, staggered or concurrent.
Mhm.
Pick one from each one, make a question, put it on the ballot, and it gets voted on with one vote.
Okay. It's a package deal.
It is.
And then a few or 3 or 5 years later, the voters could decide to pick apart the package and change certain options by referendum.
And by the way, that can go on the ballot. The change can go on the ballot. I think it has to be at least 4 years later. But can go on the ballot either by the council, mayor and council, or council manager deciding to put it on the ballot, or by a petition going on the ballot. It does not require this charter study commission again, and it likely wouldn't go through a charter study.
And you didn't ask this, but let me put my 2 cents in here about wards, because there was a question earlier about wards versus at large. I work in both towns with wards, towns without wards. And there's pros and cons to both. But what I would say is sometimes the ward leaders, sometimes there's issues that are in the best interest of the municipality, but not necessarily in the best interest of that ward. So that's where the ward, I understand it's a representation issue, but when the at-large people, it's easier for them to vote on things that are better for Holmdel, as opposed to, well, that's maybe good for Holmdel, but it's not good for my ward, so I'm not voting for it. So you get that with the wards. All right, you guys are experts.
Okay. Yeah.
Quite, yeah.
We appreciate it.
Clarified
Can
a
you do
lot.
me a favor, just unshare your screen so we can go back, stop sharing the screen? Unless anyone else have any specific questions on that. Well, thank you very much, Ed. That was very informative. That was great that you clearly know your stuff, and it's a reason we went to the New Jersey DCA to ask for help. We really do appreciate that. Thank you for your time. I know you're a very, very busy person, but we appreciate that. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. And I'll leave on a positive note. I wrote down here that the mayor said you had a AAA rating and you because of your financial strength. And I'll say that doesn't happen by accident. That happens because you elect good people, you hire good people, and towns that have those kind of bond ratings, it doesn't happen by accident. So keep up the good work. And if you have any other questions, Chairman G has my information. Just reach out.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to leave you
Thank
guys.
you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much, Ed.
All right. So last but not least, we have Mayor from Ocean Township. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Castling to introduce him and to go through the questions. But I do want to know, I want to thank the mayor that he actually stay around this thing and sit through. I know some of that stuff he already knows because Ocean Township, in fact, have gone to a change to the Faulkner Act, and that's one of the reasons we invited him. But so I mentioned earlier that we're kind of in this transition from phase 1 to phase 2, so there's no abrupt ending where, obviously with Mayor Bontempo, that's still part of our phase 1 to study the current form of government. But at the same time, because of schedule conflicts and things like that, we thought it makes sense to kind of transition, at least have some of the other discussions. And so this is actually the first of individual from one of the possible options under the Faulkner Act. And so we will, as Ed said earlier, we'll definitely invite, try to get as many elected officials from one of not only the 2 forms of the government that are possible, or technically 3, I guess, but also within those 2, as you can see from the previous presentation, there's really a lot of options, whether it's partisan, nonpartisan, wards at large, staggered, concurrent, whatever. So there are lots of those things. So Mayor, with that, let me turn over to Commissioner Castling.
Thank you, Ken. I'll just highlight some of the significant accomplishments of Chris Siciliano, who, as Ken mentioned, is the current mayor of Ocean Township. He's been the mayor since 2015. Before that, he was the mayor, deputy mayor from 2011 to 2015. He served on the Ocean Township Council since 2003. During his tenure, he's created over 50 council initiatives. Before being a council member, he was a former environmental commissioner and a member of the planning board. He's a 60-year resident of Ocean Township. I think that gives away your age too, Chris.
A little bit.
He's a former wrestling and Little League and Pop Warner coach, well-rounded. He's a member of the Ocean Chamber of Commerce. He's a member of the Italian American Association of Ocean, and he's a former Asbury Park Rotarian. He's during his tenure, he's received many significant awards, some of which I'll highlight here. He's a recipient of the New Jersey Senate Service Award. He's a recipient of the New Jersey Assembly Leadership Award. He's the recipient of the Ocean Township Chamber 2016 Man of the Year Award. He's a recipient of the Ocean Township Historical Museum Good Guy Award. He's the recipient of the Monmouth County Freeholders, or I guess you would call them Commissioners, Community Service Award, and many others, too numerous to mention. He's raised over $150,000 from the Mayor's Ball to benefit pediatric cancer. He's the father of two, Regina and Anthony, and he currently lives with his fiancee, Lisa Green. So with that, unless you'd like to elaborate, that's a little bit of information about you, Chris. I guess are you unable to get your camera to work?
So, no, I can't get the camera on. I don't know why, but it's probably better off than comb my hair tonight. So just, thanks, Ken, for having me. Bill, thank you. I was paid 150. I got the other 49 here. You guys don't mind, I'll leave it in. I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry, I don't know if anyone else have, I have problem hearing Chris. Is there any chance you could be closer to the mic or your camcorder or your webcam, or is that
Why don't you give it a try, Chris?
Yeah. How's that?
Yeah, that appears to be better. So let's then start with some of the questions regarding, these are all phase 2 questions. The first is kind of open-ended. Please describe your municipality's form of government.
So we are, as you've been discussed, the Faulkner Act council manager. I like to almost say manager. Council in our situation, that had mentioned, the manager deals with the power in as much as he handles the day-to-day operations of the township. That's what we hired him for. We are really just part-time legislators. A conduit for the people of Ocean Township. We bring their concerns to the meeting, and then we try to work out what's best for them. But the manager definitely runs day-to-day operation. As mayor, I preside over the meeting. I don't have any more or less powers than any other council. We run at large. We are every 4 years. We are the boards. We're down to about 27,208. Been around since 1849, but our form of government has existed since 1964.
Okay, I guess everybody able to understand that here well enough? If not, we can ask questions.
Partially.
Did he say the mayor was directly elected? I didn't get it.
No, we run at large, Jerry. So I'm appointed by the council members after an election. Or the
Okay.
mayor would be appointed.
Okay,
It's pretty much just not something empirical, but it's been a tradition. So we've kind of kept that. We're nonpartisan. We check our politics at the door. Most of us do. We come in and do the town business. As it was bequeathed to us from mayor to mayor, there's no Democratic or Republican way to pave streets or plow snow or pick up leaves or, provide services.
How long has your municipality had this form of government?
Since 1963.
Do you recall or do you know what it was before that? Just curious.
It was committee before that.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go on to the second question here. The Faulkner Act provides for different forms of local government and options within those forms. Can you provide any background or considerations that led to your town's form of local government, including the other options considered?
Again, that was something started when they brought this form of government in 1963. I just think the folks that were on the board at the time decided this was best for the township. This is how we go now. Like Holmdel or any other town, we've grown a lot since 1963. Things have changed. Is there room for change? Absolutely. I couldn't begin to where to tell you what changes for Holmdel. Every township, every municipality is different. It seems like the mayor, the Temple, has a pretty good handle on his town. He, like myself, has institutional knowledge of the township. I think that's important. That really helps you further advance the town. But I'm satisfied with our form of government. I enjoy how it works. It's not that stressful. We're not thinking about politics. We're just thinking about serving the needs, meeting the needs of the community.
Obviously, the council is happy with you since you've been mayor since 2015. So I guess that bodes well for you and the community. Next question. What do you think works best about your current form of government? And the opposite is what could be improved, perhaps?
So what works best, again, the nonpartisan component. I do like that. Again, I'm not a very political person, although our council is made up of folks of varying degrees of political enthusiasm. I believe it like that. So some are really, really into it, and some just take it as good. But I think the nonpartisan thing works best as you're serving. We're fiduciaries. We're really there to meet the needs. Treat it like a hotel. I like to think of a 5-star hotel. We're trying to provide the best services. The dichotomy of balancing a budget without really burdening the taxpayers. Delivering the high quality services that they should have.
Are there ways you think your current form of government could be improved?
Well, I would say we do have a May election, and we've talked about maybe going to November, but we've always kept it May. And the reason for that is it does cost money to have the election in May, and then you have another one in November when there's a general. It's not a lot of money, but we've decided to kind of keep the May election to really keep the politics out of it. The Temple alluded to that, even though we're local and he doesn't think that politics get involved, but they seep their way in sometimes and they really keep your distance. I think the May election works best, but if you can change something, I would say maybe just keep it all November. And if we had other thoughts, discussions on different types, maybe of the mayor, council versus a council manager, I'm quite pleased the way it's operating now. It's a lot of responsibility and time off my hands.
Hey, Chris, using nonpartisan election, how's the voter turnout?
It's weak, Jerry. When I say weak, we probably have at best a 20% turnout, and being that it's May, so it's almost like when we go out campaigning, you're knocking doors, you have your campaign, you have your voter registration list in front of you, and really want to knock on the doors of the fours. Those are the people that vote for every election, versus the ones are ones that vote for just for president, two, president and governor, three, so on and so forth. I like to go to the guy who votes for ball catcher. So, wow, got a great opportunity here. This guy's engaged. But yes, the turnout's low. This and with the mega election, folks don't realize. You can tell them that look, and have all the signs up in the world and put all the literature out there that hey, the campaign's coming up, the election's coming up, it's coming up. But it's May, it's on Tuesday. And, oh, gee, was that the other day? If I told you how many people said, hey, I voted for you, it couldn't be. We only had 4,000 votes. 10,000 people said they voted for me. It's not possible.
So if you were to change to November, do you think that would be better then because it would be associated with a national or state election?
Yes, absolutely. Get better voter turnout.
Good question, Jerry. Thank you. Now, the next question has multiple parts. And to the extent they've not already been covered, do you have any thoughts of the following options? First one being electing the mayor directly by the residents versus by the town council.
Okay, so I'm not opposed to either form, really. We're just used to doing it this way where typically the mayor would say, or the person that wants to put a ticket together, hey, so-and-so, we're leaving 3 vacancies here. I want to bring in some other people on the council, and I'll put the ticket together. I'd like your support as the mayor, and that's usually how our township works. But being elected directly from the people, that's not a bad option at all. I would go for that as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure the size of your council. How many council members do you have?
Or 5, and I think that's a good size.
Okay, so, all right, you've already answered the question. Then the number of members on a town council can be 5, 7, or 9, and you just indicated that you think 5 is the right number. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it gets too cumbersome if you have more, and it also kind of puts the not pressure, but it really gets you more involved with take this charge as a council member, you're elected to be council member. Take it seriously, show up at the meetings, be there for the votes, be involved in the budget, which is one of the most important aspects of municipal government. And it brings you there. You know, on the planning board, zoning board, you have 9 members, and oftentimes you have several that are alternate members. You have to call on them to have a vote just to have a quorum. But the council of 5, you don't have that. They show up. You know, we look at our calendar for the year, we make our schedules, make our vacations around it if we have to. But it works out pretty well.
Okay, thank you. I think you've answered the next one. What are your thoughts on the holding elections on a partisan versus non-partisan basis? But if you'd like to elaborate on your previous answer, please do.
Yeah, again, I am all for nonpartisan elections. It's funny, when I first came on council, short story, Mayor Bill Larkin, my predecessor, he was the one that tapped me for, my family's been around town a long, long time. He thought I'd be a good person to have on a ticket, and that's how I could build a ticket. And by the way, Chris, one of the last question, what are you? You're a Republican or Democrat? And he goes, not that it matters because we're not partisan. I said, I don't know, Bill. Now, I was 42 years old, and I wasn't sure because I registered to vote in 1977 at a Grateful Dead concert in Englishtown. I don't know what I voted. I registered. We were kind of apolitical.
You were stoned.
My dad, we had a real estate business, and he said, listen, no bumper stickers, don't tell people if you're Republican or Democrat, we're trying to sell a house over here, whatever that guy says, yeah, I agree with you. Bill had this big book, and he looked at me, by the way, you're registered as a Democrat. So, oh, is that good or bad? No, it's not bad because we only have 2 right now, so it kind of balances it out. It's okay, sounds good by me.
Okay. Thanks for the laughter here. So what are your thoughts on electing council members at large versus ward by ward?
Ward by ward would work in certain cities or towns, I would think. in our town, no, I think it's best that we go at large because we're all part of the community. In fact, two of our council members are neighbors right now. So one would be knocked out. They're really good members. So I really think at large really works best for our town. Again, every township is cut up from different segments. I don't know, we're a checkerboard style town. It's just a massive farmland that was redeveloped into bedroom community. But for us, I enjoy this style of government.
What's the population of your town?
27,232. Unless somebody was born recently.
Okay, thanks. And holding elections on a concurrent or staggered basis, what are your thoughts there, regardless of what you're currently doing?
Again, I think the concurrent works best for our situation. I prefer it that way. Every 4 years. And as I think Mayor Temple had alluded to before, it gives you time to really work into an area of town or get familiar with what you're working on. Listen, some of these projects take years to develop, right? And so if you're all on board there, and you don't want an interruption in maybe a voter or someone that started a project and now, well, they didn't get voted in because we had a staggered election. Now we have this really big project, and now we have to bring the new guy on board and try to acclimate them into what's going on. So I really think the concurrent works best for our town.
Thank you. Next question. Under the Faulkner forms of government, residents can petition for a referendum for an ordinance. Are you aware whether the residents in your town have ever done this? If so, can you share with us what happened? What do you think about this opportunity for the voters?
So that's not a bad thing. We haven't had that situation since I've been around. We've put referendum questions out for the voters, such as beer management, marijuana, things like that. But we haven't had the residents propose an ordinance. So, which tells you you're quite satisfied with the way you're operating the township also. If you get inundated with these proposals, that tells you something.
Understood. Thank you. And if you were to make changes to your current form of government, what would they be and why?
Again, I think going back to maybe moving it to November, that would probably give you a better voter turnout and more engagement in the process. That would be the one biggest thing. Maybe electing the mayor directly. Again, give the voters a chance. If they're that engaged, why not let them pick who they think should presiding mayor? I would think those are only two I would change in our town.
Those are the bulk of the questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think every municipality is different, as we all know. You guys all serve. You're part of the fabric of the community. And so you, like myself, we're really just conduits from the people. We're out there, we're being engaged with the public. We're hearing what their situations are. We're part of it. And you almost can't avoid it at times either. I mean, in as much as I'm the mayor and I don't have any extra powers or anything over the other council members, when there's a snowstorm, they have my phone number, not everybody else. So they do go after the mayor a lot. And if there's going to be a dog pile on social media, the mayor's going to dog pile. But you got to be able to take that and just kind of laugh it off and just listen to what the dog pile is about. What the concern is. But I think that nonpartisan, the Faulkner Act's a great form of government. It's very equal. There's everybody an opportunity to participate. Again, you check your politics at the door. You come in and you do the work for the citizens, for the township.
Okay. Other commissioners, you have any questions? Okay, I guess not. Well, Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor.
Right, take care.
Take care.
Okay, so I think that's all the business. Any other new business before I turn to public comment session?
I think you might want to, and And I probably opened Pandora's box earlier by pointing out a question that was being posed to Mayor Buontempo. But I think you should reiterate at the beginning of each of these meetings that questions will be entertained at the end, and they are to be directed to the commissioners, not the invited guests.
Okay, thank you for that. If there are no other new business, I should mention that I noticed that here tonight we got a lot of new names that had not apparently have not attended our past meetings. This is our 7th meeting, but in several of the meetings I have mentioned this thing, but I want to just kind of repeat this for the benefit of all the new attendees. The Charter Study Commission is a relatively simple one. It's to study our current form of local government and to consider whether, improvements in the present charter or to consider a new charter. I think it is important that we make the distinction that the mandate is to study and to explore how we can improve the current form of local government. So it's not the mandate of this commission to make an analysis or review of the operations or the policy of the current government. If for some reason you're not happy with the specific actions or decisions of the current or past township committee or other boards, zoning board, planning board, etc., this is not the venue to voice your comments about that unless you believe that the current form of local government, which is the township government, is a direct cause or a significant contributing factor. I should also mention that on the other hand, you might believe that the current government is working well, but still want to change the form of government. And I think you heard a lot about tonight. An example might be that you believe that the mayor, as the official that represents Holmdel Township, should be directly elected by voters. Our current form of government does not allow for that. So I just want to mention that. Anyone who's interested in making a public comment, if you could, on the lower, on the bottom of your screen, there's a raise hand. It's just a palm icon, and you raise that. We will call upon you, and when you call upon, if you can give your name and address, and then make any comments you want. We should note that if you got questions about the process and what we're doing, we will do the best we can to answer that. But if you got questions about other matters and things like that, again, this is not the forum to do that. So again, check on the bottom of your screen. If there's an icon for raise hand, press on that and we'll call upon you. The first one we have is Christian Demar, I believe. Hopefully I didn't butcher up your name too much. And we're going to allow you to talk. If you could give your name and address, please.
Chris Damari. I'm proudly residing at 10 Seven Oaks Drive. And to just introduce myself, my family has been in town for the last 40 plus years. We've raised 2 generations of families and have owned local businesses in what is an incredible town. We built lifelong relationships and have much pride for Holmdel. I will say for myself, I was taken back when I first heard that there was a group of people pushing for this charter study, analyzing and making recommendations to change a government structure which has been in place for over a century. To me, this structure has clearly been working because Holmdel continues to be an amazing town. It's not perfect. No place is. Although over the years, I've seen that our local government structure has worked very well together in preserving what I see as our prestigious town's incredible values. So it's really got me wondering, why would anyone want to change this? And what is the motive? Currently, our town council is as diverse as it gets. We've got 2 endorsed Republicans, 2 independents, and 1 non-endorsed Republican. This is fair and balanced. This, to me, defines a government structure that is working. So I just want to talk more about what the urgency is to make these radical changes. Yes, I'm new to these meetings and being at township, meetings per se, but I needed to learn who's involved and what's going on. So I just love to better understand. Okay, just want to better understand what's going on. Started looking into the committee. I started looking into the people who's pushing this. So please correct me if I'm wrong. I just really would like to know, and I don't know if this is something you want to answer right away or at the end, but some of my thoughts are, is it a fact that only 5 people in this entire town applied to be nominated on this charter or committee? And if so, this is intriguing to me because this is something so big, so radical, and it's just hard to believe that only 5 people stepped up to be a part of this committee, which allowed you all to run unopposed. I wanted to ask Mayor Bontempo questions. I guess that's not part of this platform, but I couldn't find anything publicly on this matter. When did Mayor Bontempo announce to the Holmdel residents how to apply, and what was the expiration date for this? Mayor Bontempo mentioned tonight that he is extremely transparent. I just want to know if he is putting out a clear message. I did read that he publicly stated that Holmdel's current form of government is outdated and dysfunctional. And to me, that's very interesting for our mayor to say. He spent the last 10 years on this town council, many of them as the mayor. And he even went on and on tonight about how great this town is running. So I really need to understand from him, how much responsibility does he bear for this so-called dysfunction that he publicly stated? He's made his intentions clear. I found it appalling for our leader, our mayor, to say tonight, quote, "Whatever this committee decides is the right way to go," end quote. This committee has not even brought recommendations to the table yet. How could he say that? Look, I just want to understand who people are and what's going on. Ken G, you're the chair of this group, okay? What I formulated, and I would love to just better understand things like, and to me, it's the conflict of interest that I continue to pile up here. We have a major thing going on. Our Holmdel residents deserve transparency and to know who's driving this committee. Ken G, you became chair. I'm looking at publicly, you have a very, strong public biased political view for many years from what I see. And I wanted to know how involved you were in running the campaigns for 2 current town council members who happen to be independents, and that's Prakash Santana and Kathy Weber, utilizing your Better Holmdel page for Better Holmdel page. And also very influential in running campaigns for recently elected Board of Education members. I asked my fellow Holmdel residents, many of them who have no idea what's going on, how is someone who has infiltrated all aspects of our Holmdel political landscape now nominated to chair a charter study that's looking at our government and looking to change it? So to me, that's a huge conflict of interest for the Holmdel residents. And I feel strongly that the citizens of Holmdel, our town, we the people, need to reconsider and learn more about who is running this charter study. And this is my biggest issue. If we want to look at our town and analyze it and make changes, I'm all for that. But I do feel like there's a tremendous amount of conflict of interest on this committee. And this is all public stuff. And that I have a problem with. After the first charter meeting, I picked up the 2 River Times, who quickly created a narrative. Quote, "After the first public input session of the Holmdel Township Charter Study Commission, one thing is clear, residents are looking for a change, period," end quote. I looked at that and immediately asked, what residents are they talking about? From what I saw in the first meeting, the people who spoke on this public forum during the first session all seem to be connected to this inner circle of people who are running this committee. I started asking around to my very strong network of great people in this town of Holmdel. I've known these people for decades, young and old, across all party lines. And most are not even aware what is going on in this town. And anyone who has seen the reports doesn't understand anything about it. And let's face it, we just saw this whole Faulkner Act. It is extremely confusing. I'm sitting here all night and I'm having trouble understanding. How are the Holmdel residents supposed to understand this? To me, the real narrative is Holmdel residents are in the dark. In good faith for a fair assessment, We need to make sure we are informing and educating our fellow Holmdel residents about this charter study. From what I'm hearing from many people, we're doing a terrible job at doing this. It's unfortunate, but to
Mr.
me,
Damari, I'm sorry.
I'm done.
finishing up
I
right now. I'm finishing up, okay? Because we listened for the last couple hours. To me, nothing smells right about this. It really just seems like a plan that's being pushed through while nobody's paying attention or even can wrap their heads around this. As this committee is structured today, I strongly oppose this charter study. I feel that certain members and Ken G as the chair should strongly considering stepping down so we can do a fair and balanced assessment. There are way too many conflicts of interest that this town needs to know about. And the time is now for people of Holmdel, the ones who truly embrace our values, to step up and get involved. We need more transparency. We need more answers. And this is how I feel as a Holmdel resident, 40-something years born and raised in Holmdel. Thank you for letting me share the public forum.
Thank you for your comment. I just want to make a quick response, but before I do that, we have a large number of people in attendance, and I can see at least 4 or 5 other hands. So most of you know, in Township Committee, in a number of other forums, the public comment sessions, folks are limited to 3 minutes. We have not deliberately tried to set that. And in fact, we have given Mr. Damari probably close to 8 minutes, according to my clock, of comments. I just want to be cognizant we have other folks who would like the opportunity to speak. I will exercise some discretion. If you could please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you run over a little bit, that's fine. And we understand that. So let me be very clear, because I think there seems to be a lot of misinformation. And quite honestly, I'm not sure there may have been some false information that may have been out there. So I would just want to take a couple of minutes just to make absolutely clear. The Township Committee introduced a public ordinance in a public hearing back in July 2021. And as part of that introduction, they read what the ordinance would be, what the proposed ordinance would be. It would be public notice. That was the first reading of that. And I remember very distinctly that at that meeting, one gentleman stood up and asked some questions about that, and then specifically asked, how do we vote on that? How do people get elected to serve on that commission? Because it sounds like there's a commission and so on. So anyone who's interested, you can go back to one of the July meeting. As you know, the township maintains a YouTube page that has all the live streaming and video tapes, and you can do that. So that's the first hearing. Then in August, there was the actual hearing of the ordinance that was introduced. And there were a public hearing for that. There were specific questions open up for public comments before they voted. And then it was voted. Now, here's the key part. This is an ordinance, and it's a question to whether establish a charter study commission or not. And that was placed on the ballot in the November 2021 general election. And as part of the general election, voters, all Holmdel voters, were allowed to vote on that, yes or no, to establish that. And concurrent with that were people who filed petition, who took the time to be to say that, hey, if this is passed, we want to serve on that commission. So that was all done as part of the November 2021 election that hopefully Mr. Damari and a lot of other people had took the time to vote on that. So this is not a committee that was appointed or formed or whatever. The public question had to be passed, and that was passed, and you've seen the some of the votes and everything like that. And then after that, the 5 commissioners were elected. And then after that, the commissioners had an organizational meeting. back in November per statute. We had to hold that 15 days after the election results were made official. And doing that, that was an open public meeting and a chairperson was nominated and elected. So I just want to kind of lay out the facts, but thank you for your comments. We are going to.
Yeah, just,
So-
I want to just clarify one thing.
Sure.
And
Please.
at that July meeting, you didn't really finish the sentence. A gentleman asked, how do you get to be on the ballot to be a commissioner? And the township councilman explained that you get a petition of voters to sign it and put your name on the ballot by September 1st. That was all explained at that meeting. There was no hidden way of getting on. It was all explained in public forum of how you could run to be a commissioner. As it turned out, the 5 of us were the ones who were dedicated enough to the goodness of our town that stepped up to going out and getting signatures and getting our names on the ballot. And so here we are to do the work.
Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners if they want?
I just want to make clear that we may or may not make recommendations to do anything. And whatever we recommend or do not recommend, I mean, if there is a recommendation, it has to be passed by the public. So whatever concerns, we've had one public meeting, there will be more public meetings, and then the voters are going to decide. We're not pushing this through. We are analyzing, we're listening to what people say. We may have recommendations, but you are going to decide whether you want any change.
If I may just clarify, so we have had 7 public meetings. I think what Commissioner Burke mentioned is we have one public hearing that was specifically for the public to get their input as part of phase 1. And as we indicated, we will hold additional public hearings. Certainly after phase 2, there is there's a lot to lay on. This is only first of a number of public meetings and then public hearings as well too. So if there's no other comment, I'm going to bring in a second member from the public. Seeing none. Hopefully I'm not going to butcher up the name too bad, but Tia Kovalovas, you're on mute and you've just been placed there. If you could state your name and address, and please, I'm going to give some discretion, but please try to limit yourself to somewhere around 3 minutes.
Sure, thank you. My name is Fiano Kolovos and I live at 8 Canyon Woods Court. And the mayor said a lot of very positive things about Holmdel, about how we've been getting things done at a rapid rate. We've kept the tax rates flat. I just don't see why at this point, still in a pandemic, the pandemic has not been called to an end yet, why we are making drastic changes or suggesting drastic changes. Some of us, most of us have barely gotten our heads around, sending our kids to school without masks. That hasn't even happened yet. But I'm concerned about the timing of all of this, especially what it could do to our taxes in the future. Would we be paying more in taxes for our new mayor if we elected him? I'm just concerned about our taxes in general and, how this would slow down the progress that Holmdel has made over the last decade. That is all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next comment will be from John Giampono. Hopefully, again, I apologize if you can state your name and address, please.
Hello, this is John Giampolo. I live with my family at Blue Hills Drive, Holmdel, New Jersey. I'll be brief. I just want to say I echo a number of the concerns that were raised by Mr. Damari. I moved here with my family from Hoboken, in part to get away from the more expansive, costly forms of government that I'm concerned sound like they're being proposed here. First question for you is to expand on probably the last question that was asked. Have you studied, have you even estimated how much taxes, as well as any other costs and expenses, may increase for Holmdel and for each Holmdel household as a result of the new forms of government, that are being proposed here? It sounds like these are more expansive, costly forms of government under the Faulkner Act, including changing Holmdel, dividing Holmdel into wards, creating more salaried government positions, increasing the number of town council members, and et cetera. These sound like forms of government that are used by much larger municipalities, or municipalities that have higher crime rates, or municipalities that are very different from Holmdel. I mean, so far we've heard as examples, Vineland, Atlantic City, Ocean Township. Even Ocean Township is much larger than Holmdel. A lot of us all pay more than enough already. So I think one of the things we'd like to know is, are you looking into, do you have any idea of what this is going to do in terms of not just increased taxes, but also any other increases in expenses and costs? Also, I'm interested in what would be the benefit to this idea of dividing up the town as small as Holmdel into wards. I mean, we've already heard one of the speakers say that alone comes with its own set of problems. There'd be a number of issues that are in the best interest of the town as a whole, but not in the best interest of certain wards. Last question really goes into, won't this nonpartisan form of government that are being proposed, won't it cause lower voter turnout, which we heard the last speaker say, as well as be more susceptible to gerrymandering, to divide up the majority of voters who would have otherwise voted or chosen to vote down their party line? If, for example, let's say that the majority of voters in Holmdel might have voted down the party line Republican leaning. But now, if you have a nonpartisan election, there may be who knows how many different candidates that run for office. There could be certain candidates that are running really for the purpose of dividing up the majority votes, resulting in a minority of voters that are undivided, deciding an election that otherwise would have been decided by the majority voting down the party line. And lastly, I just echo the sentiment that we've even heard the mayor say today, that so many people choose to stay in Holmdel or choose to come back to Holmdel for so many reasons, because Holmdel has been working well and that it serves as a model for a number of other towns. So I'm not clear. I'd like to know exactly what you think is, or what anyone thinks is so wrong with Holmdel's current system that we should be considering the different forms of government that sound like they are used by other municipalities that are much larger populations and have their own more problems than Holmdel itself does. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I call on the next speaker, I just want to mention something. Again, it appears to be a lot of the people who are attending meetings of the Charter Study Commission for the first time. This is our 7th meeting, and I didn't want to repeat too much things that have been said in the past, but it looks like I would have to. At the beginning, we have said that what the mandate was, and then we kind of broadly describe our plan, which will consist of 3 phases. Phase 1 is to really study the current form of government and understand the strength, what's good about it, and maybe things that are not so good about it that could be improved upon. And then phase 2 would be to look at possible alternatives. And then phase 3 would be a deliberation. And then if we feel that there may be some things that could be improved upon or a different form of government, then at that point, we would have a recommendation. So, we are literally still in between phase 1 and phase 2. And I think to some of the questions that some folks are asking, it's a little bit, maybe premature because we don't have a recommendation right now. All phase one, if you can go back and watch, is to talk to people about the current form of government, how they feel about what the strengths and what the weaknesses are. People have served more than 50 years on township committee, 22 years of that, and that doesn't include Mayor Bontempo, 22 years as mayor. So we would encourage you, all these video recordings, all the prior meetings are on the Holmdel Township's YouTube page. You can watch that. They're certainly on our website as well. It may make it easier for you to look at that. And then there's a little bit of lag, but the minutes of the meetings will also be posted. So we would encourage you folks to do, especially those who are attending the meetings for the first time. So in the interest of moving on, I'm going to call the next speaker. I think I got a JD man here. If you could please state, oops, did I click the wrong one? I apologize. Looks like West and Delilah. I apologize. I will make sure I'll get JD man as the next.
Okay, Wes Fagan is up next.
Yes.
Okay.
If you can state your name and address, please.
Wes Fagan, 50 Chestnut Ridge Road, Holmdel. I'm a 30-year resident. A couple of things. One is Mayor Bontempo quote, in talking about the role of mayor, he said, you can't step into it. So since I can't ask him a question, I'll read into what I think he meant. And that is it would make sense to have a little bit of experience in the mayor's role. And if the mayor were directly elected, I would assume that there would be no way to say that he or she have any previous experience in that. So I'm wondering rhetorically what recourse the public would have if we wind up with a lemon. Would there be a lemon law associated with the election of the mayor, because he or she has to be ready on day one? In considering somebody like a Bernie Madoff, he would have been very good in terms of his resume, but halfway into his term, we might have discovered something that we didn't really want to work with for 3.5 more years. And that's the first thing. The second thing is what John had mentioned. In a nonpartisan election, there would be no primary. So as I see it, you would have potential for an unlimited amount of candidates on the ballot. And 2 more items. One, I think this Zoom style meeting is for the birds. I could not hear the Ocean Township mayor and his discussion. I see, Mr. G, you are in town hall. I'm wondering why we aren't all in town hall. And lastly, is the next meeting on March 3rd and subsequently going to be public? Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just comment. All meetings are public. I think you meant in person, correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just removed him, but yeah, we should make mention that we are trying to follow, as most of you know, there was a surge in COVID cases, and the township committee, the planning board, and the zoning board had at one point or another have decided to follow the protocol to move their meeting on a virtual basis. And so we have that. Now, I have noticed that there at a recent meeting, I think because of proclamation, that was in person, but the zoning board, for example, was still on a virtual basis. So until I think the picture is clearer with respect to COVID and others, we are trying to follow other boards, township committees, etc. So in a perfect world, we would love all this to be in person, but unfortunately until that happens. But we have noticed that there is a lot more attendance on a virtual basis as well too. So next, I apologize. I know I had said JD Man was next and I put someone up there. So hopefully I get this right. If you can state your name and address, please.
Yeah, it's Jeff Mann, 705 Holmdel Road. Well, good evening, committee members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I actually want to just go on the record saying a couple of things. One is, Ken, you mentioned in the beginning, and only because you brought it up, it was, slightly misleading, and I just am in the vein of transparency, and it might be misleading to some people. The Sheriff Golden letter, and I think it's important to reveal that it is a form letter that everyone elected receives. And I also think it's interesting that the committee seems to be in favor of eliminating parties, yet stated that he is he's the chairman of the Monmouth County Republican Party. So I want to go on record stating that. Also, other cities that have that operate and they're governed under the provisions of the Faulkner Act are Camden, Newark, South Orange, Asbury Park, Jersey City, Patterson, Elizabeth. These are all much different than Holmdel. And I think, Holmdel values need to be preserved. There's so much to this, and to expect that regular voters or regular people can understand this and process this, I think is asking a lot. Especially, and one small facet of this is eliminating parties. It's one of the only ways people can identify their candidate at the polls. Running as independent, it's last in the gubernatorial election, and the last one, the town had a 42% turnout. Of those people, how many were really informed and educated and can vote with confidence? Now take away the party line designation, we're creating even more confusion for them. And again, that's just a small piece of this Faulkner Act and a small piece of what could potentially, be coming down the line here. But, I guess I end with a question. Really, what is by eliminating parties, what and operating under the Faulkner Act, what is the purpose of changing our, the democratic system that we have? So I'd pose that question. And as a follow-up, is this slated for June or November? And I'm not sure if you know that now, but if you do, I'd love to know. And thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next I have is Tom Santora.
Yes. My name is Tom Santora, 8 Willow Road. Just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I just want to confirm, I think Janet mentioned it before, the recommendations are just that, recommendations. They're not mandates, or they have to go before either the public or the town committee. Is that correct?
Can you, I'm sorry, can you just ask all your questions or comments, or when that way we don't interrupt, because we still have other people raise their hand. I just want to be fair to everybody. So if you can do that, you can respond.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. I just have 2 questions. One, just want to confirm that the recommendations from the Charter Committee are just that, recommendations. And what was the origin of this Charter Committee? And I just want to basically just confirm that there was only 5 candidates, and all 5 candidates were elected. I just, I think there's an issue where 5 people, unelected people are, granted, you guys, you knew to basically, sign up for this Charter Committee. However, I think it might be an issue where, 5 people, unelected people, are making recommendations for the town. So just want to confirm that only 5 people applied and that it's just recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Commissioner Burke, do you want to,
Yes.
I can jump in, or Commissioner Gilstein, did you want to?
Or Kevin can explain. Maybe that would be.
Yeah.
Right?
Here, the Charter Study Commission, it will determine it after conducting these public hearings whether or not to recommend a change in the form of government. If there is not a recommendation made, it will continue as township form. If there is a recommendation made, that recommendation will go directly onto the ballot. The township committee has no role in this. So the Charter Study Commission's recommendation goes on the ballot, and then that gets put in front of the voters. If the voters approve the change that's recommended, that becomes implemented. If the voters do not approve it, then it does not get implemented, and it's a simple majority vote that goes on the ballot. So that's the process we're going to go through here. There is a recommendation, but it's only that by the Charter Study Commission. It is up to the voters to determine whether or not the form of government is ultimately changed.
And just in terms of, we did not sign up. We needed to get signatures. I believe it was 100 signatures that we each needed to get. We filed, and then we were placed on the ballot. And so we were elected to serve on this commission.
That's correct. And every member, every resident of Holmdel was eligible to file a petition, and it was a very public process. It was public before the committee. It was in the press. Every member, every resident of Holmdel was eligible to put a petition in to be placed on the ballot, just as if they're running for local office and what in fact you're doing. And then when you're on the ballot, the voters decide who's going to be elected to the Charter Study Commission.
Sure. Commissioner Gilson, was there a comment you want to make before or not? I wasn't sure.
No, I just wanted to make sure that we clarified that the recommendation, whatever recommendation, if we have one, will be voted on by the residents of Holmdel.
Okay. Thank you. And next I've got Eugenia, I don't have a Samantha. Can you state your name and address, please?
Good evening. My name is Eugenia Samardin. I reside at 34 Galloping Hill Circle. My question has to do with the timing. When do you expect to have a recommendation? If you will be making a recommendation, when is that slated to occur? My second question is, will there be an opportunity to debate that? What is the period of time between that recommendation being issued and that getting on the ballot? Is there going to be an opportunity to debate that? Can somebody come forward and study it? Or is it just going directly on the ballot and then a week later people are going to be asked to vote on it? My third question has to do with transparency and getting the public involved. It is extremely difficult. I echo the sentiments made by the earlier speakers, residents, attendees. It is extremely difficult to participate in this setting. A lot of us are on mute. A lot of us would like to be involved and see people face to face. This is extremely disjointed and very, very difficult. It's part of the same problem with having proposed such an enormous change during a time of a global health pandemic. In July of 2021, I know most people were nervous about staying alive and their parents staying alive, and other critically important issues such as that. And people might have not been paying attention to an ordinance popping up, in the township. So, I'm sure if that wasn't going on, that more people would have maybe run to serve on the commission, including myself. I would have been, one of the people that would have been interested in perhaps throwing my hat in the ring, but I had no idea this was going on. So the timing of it, I think, is troubling, I would say. So again, my first question has to do with timing. When will a recommendation be forthcoming? Second, what is the timeline between that and it actually reaching a vote or being submitted for a vote to the public? Is there a debate or an opportunity to debate that in a public forum? And third, are we going to have in-person meeting next time for this study commission? Why not suspend it until we can have an in-person? It seems like we're very close to that, and the Board of Ed is already having those in-person meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor, I'm going to take a quick stab and then I'm going to try to turn it over to you. Statutorily, we have 9 months to finish the work from the time. So we're very mindful of that. And that's one of the reasons we've been conducting these meetings, working hard at this thing. So, it's, can you finish early? Yes, you can finish early, but you can't finish later than 9 months. So hence we've been, we front loaded a lot of meetings up front to make sure we can finish within 9 months. You don't want to do is find yourself in the 8th month and we're still, whatever, and far from getting that. But in terms of, we have announced that last meeting, was the first public hearing to get input on phase 1, because at that point we have heard we got a number of input from elected officials that have served on township committees. So as we go through in phase 2 and we learn more about the different options and different things, we will certainly will entertain a second public hearing for the public to comment and provide their input based on perhaps what they have heard. And then we'll go through a phase 3 with deliberation and possibly recommendation. And then at that point, we will look to have another public hearing. And with that, maybe Kevin, Councilor, I think there was a question as to timing from the time recommendations is made by the commission to ballot question.
Yes, that's a good question. And that the timing of it is actually established by state law. And if anyone is looking this up, it's 40:69A-15. I brought it up to make sure I got it right. When the commission has 9 months to determine a recommendation, and the reason for that is the state law does not want this commission to go on endless. So in effect, the absolute deadline for any recommendation to go on the ballot is at this coming November's general election. That's the last day it would be. It could be sooner than that, and it depends on when the commission, this Charter Study Commission, makes its recommendation. So the Charter Study Commission makes its recommendation on a certain date. That then goes on the ballot either at the next general election, if that is between 60 days and 120 days after the commission's recommendation, or it can be earlier. If it's earlier, once again, the same time frame applies. The election, it would be a special election, would be at least 60 days after the recommendation, but not more than 120 days. So that is established by state law. So, and the question, there was another question about whether or not there would be, public debate over any recommendation that goes on the ballot. And the answer is absolutely, there will be. I mean, it is, that's the point of making it at least 60 days after the recommendation so that the public can know about it, people can debate it. The debate is not whether or not the question goes on the ballot, because it goes on automatically. The debate is over whether or not that question should be approved when the election date comes. So the timing will be determined based upon the date the commission makes its recommendation or does not.
If I can just add to the ultimate discussion or debate really is on come the election time for that public question, isn't it? So you could have debate, but ultimately you would go behind the polling booth or mail-in ballot, whatever the basis, and vote yes or no on the public questions as to the recommendations by the commission. So,
right.
I'm going to go to the next speaker unless any other commissioner have any comment. Okay, the next one is Terrence Wall. If you could state your name and address, please.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Good evening. This is Terrence Wall, 170 La Quinta Court. I'll try to stay within 3 minutes. Folks, you did not get an answer to when they're going to do this. This recommendation is going to come out based on what I heard. It's going to be on a June ballot during a primary election. You can probably take that to the bank at this point. So plan on that. By way of biography, a multi-generational lifelong resident in Holmdel. I am a master's in public administration, a registered municipal clerk, a qualified purchasing agent, an affordable housing planner. I have long history in serving as a chief administrative officer in multiple jurisdictions, multiple forms of government. And Kevin, I'm sorry, you're stuck in the middle of this thing because this is a mess, because the charade is ending starting tonight. I'm calling on every resident to vote no on the expected recommendation to change this form of government. It's really interesting. It was almost like political schizophrenia tonight. I hear so many great things about Holmdel, stable budgets, great things going on. Greg Bontempo talking about how wonderful it is as he's enjoying his terms as mayor. Well, think about how you came to Holmdel, the parks, the playgrounds, the schools, the recreation opportunities, all the fantastic things. Historically, that was all done under the umbrella of a Holmdel Township Committee form of government. I've heard a little bit about strong administrators today. Holmdel's current ordinance gives significant power to the administrator. So that's not a driver. Here's the punchline, folks. The forms of government are all generally okay. All of them. It's the people that are in the offices, and that's it. And that's why I'm so troubled about how this process is going on. The first phase has not been done right. If you look at the Blaustein School in Rutgers, this first phase has been an absolute disaster. You're supposed to meet with elected officials, all of them, and talk about how the government works. You're supposed to meet with department heads. You're supposed to discuss what the operations are. You're not supposed to get 18-year Nancy Grabelia, who got bounced out from the county and still has a grudge match with Sean Golden. And by the way, Scott Brochart was never elected to the Hazlet Township Committee. You should fix those false representations. And the other lady, Rosemary, the Colts Neck lady, who's now going to set up a shadow government. That's not how you do a first phase. You do it right, you do it correctly, and you do it on time. So from this politically schizophrenic evening tonight, absolutely, unquestionably, every resident in Holmdel should bounce that question when it comes out. And I'll give you another reason. The false narrative, the little cute story that we're designing about all the people that want to change the form of government. The people that came up at the last meeting was the treasurer for Prakash Santana, was another gal, Gilstein, the spouse of the member that gave $1,800 to Santana. This is politically polluted. And you know, the irony is, it's the very things that the people on the commission have hated for years. Don't do the things that you hate. Do C, which C is keep the option the same and keep Holmdel Township Committee intact. The charade ends tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Ralph Purcell. Hopefully I didn't butcher that up too much.
No, you didn't. Ralph Purcell, you got it. 18 Red Coach Lane. I've been living in this town for 17 years. I just want to reiterate what Terrence Wall said, and that a lot of the things that are going on in Holmdel should be addressed, the quality of life, and then changing our government. This government has been working fine. I've been here. I came from New York, and when I see a study that's going to be implemented, the word study means to me is changes are a coming. That's what it means to me. I don't know what it means to you people on the board there, but this is the way I see it. If it's not broke and your candidate didn't get elected, well, guess what? The system works, okay? And that's all I have to say. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, I am checking. I do not see anyone else that have their hands raised. Help me, other commissioners, make sure I'm not missing anything. So with that, I will now close the public session. And can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.